Hi everybody, it's Attorney Brooke Goff live from my home office. Welcome. I wanted to do a video today on workers' compensation. Most of you know I am the founding partner of Goff Law Group. We do personal injury and workers' compensation law only. And I do a lot of educating through these means by where I do videos and I present them to you guys and I educate. However, I've taken this time to think, what can I do a little differently than I normally do? I usually do Workers' Comp 101. I walk you guys through the process. What can I do that's different? And I thought to myself, I learn best by example. I don't know about you guys, but I do. So I'm like, let me give an example. Let me walk them through a comp case for a fictitious client. Let's call him Steve Smith, without an attorney, and then with an attorney, and then talk about the differences, right? So that's what we're going to do, okay? We're going to talk about Steve, poor Steve, who's likely learned his lesson. And for the lesson, you guys can all learn as well from this video, all right? And again, guys, I don't do these videos to generate business. I do generate business from them in all disclosure, but I don't do it for that reason. I do it to educate you guys because my relationship with my clients are best when they hire me because they want to hire me, not because they need to, right? And I think that you need education. You need to know what you're facing before you can actually make the decision to hire a lawyer and actually stand behind it. So let's talk. Firstly, Steve Smith, right? So he's at work. He works for ABC Factory. Now, again, if there's an ABC Factory in Connecticut, this is not for you. This is just a made-up name. Steve works as a warehouse worker in ABC Factory, slips and falls on some water. Then another employee, unfortunately, guys, right, had spilled on the floor. Unfortunate for him. He falls, he breaks his leg, the bone sticking out of his leg. Now, something you should know about Steve. Steve makes $1,400 a week. He's worked there 20 years. And he's got as much seniority as you can get, okay? So you should know that now that we're going to continue. Steve breaks his leg. He's never had a comp case before though, okay? So when he does that, he immediately sees the bone. He's like, I gotta call the ambulance. Another worker sees him on the floor and helps Steve, to get his bearings, get his phone, calls the ambulance. Ambulance shows up, picks up Steve, takes him to the hospital where it's found that he suffered a displaced fracture as a result of his fall. And he needs immediate surgery. Steve gets wheeled into surgery, goes into surgery, gets the surgery, comes out, no complications. Fantastic, right? And he calls his employer after he's recovered, after about 5-6 minutes, and he calls ABC Company, his manager. Manager of ABC Company, we'll call him John. John, I was injured at work. I fell. Oh, Steve, I know the other employees told me. I'm so sorry to hear that. I've already called our insurance, 123 Insurance Company. And again, guys, if there is a 123 Insurance, this is not for you. And they're going to be reaching out to you. Oh, Steve feels great. Everybody's taking care of me. Fine. So in the interim, Steve's concerned, how am I going to get paid? How am I going to get my medical? But he knows everything's going to work itself out, which is great. Fine. So the next day, Jane from 123 Insurance calls and says, Steve, I just sent you a package of stuff in the mail. One. And number two, I've gone through and it looks like your comp rate, which is your workers' compensation rate of pay, is $800 a week. Now, Steve knows that you typically don't get your full amount from workers' compensation when you're on it. So he's like, okay, well, I guess that equates, whatever. So he is in the hospital, then he's in rehab, and then he gets out. And now Steve calls Jane and says, look, my wife thinks I should see Dr. Williams. Okay, so I have to go through names actually. Dr. Williams, fine. So the adjuster's like, Steve, we really think you should see Dr. Johnson, right? We work a lot with him and we really think you should see him. Steve's like, I don't want to push back. I don't want to make anybody upset. I really want to see Dr. Williams. Jane's like, look, see Dr. Johnson, see him for a few times, maybe 4 or 5 times. And then if you have a problem, we'll talk about it. Fine. So Steve goes, he gets out of the hospital. He's getting his checks for the $800 a week and he goes to see Dr. Johnson. Awesome, right? He sees Dr. Johnson. Johnson's like, look, you're making a miraculous recovery. And at that meeting, Steve feels like Dr. Johnson's trying to push him back into work. But he doesn't, Steve doesn't want any conflict, right? Fine. He's afraid he's going to lose his job. Fine. So, and Dr. Johnson says, look, Steve, keep coming back, go to PT, what have you. About 4 months after, when Steve is still having issues with his leg, Johnson's like, look, I think we should try to put you back to work, try to challenge you a bit. And Steve's like, I don't want to go back. How am I going to go back to work? I still have this big cast on. He's like, well, you can work 4 hours a day. Let's do that. Steve goes back to work, right? Fine. Just because he wants to. And now he's seen Dr. Johnson at this point, maybe 7 or 8 times. He doesn't like him. He feels like he's pushing him, but he doesn't want bad blood with the insurance. Fine. So he goes to see Dr. Johnson. He goes into work, light duty, 4 hours a day, what have you. As he's there, he realizes that because he's been on his leg too much, now his knee's beginning to hurt him. Fine. So he goes back to Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson's like, look, he does a bunch of tests on his knee, just regular physical tests. And he's like, I think you're fine. I'm going to give you a cortisone shot just in case. Now, Steve's never had any real problems, guys, okay? So he doesn't know what to do. And by the way, for those 4 hours he's working, his employer's paying him 4 hours, then he's getting the differential so that it equals to $800 from his comp carrier. So he thinks he's all set. He's not filed any forms. He's only sent back what's called a 1A form to the Jane, which is a form that lists how he files his taxes, his name, and then the name of his name of his dependents, and signed. Fine. So Dr. Johnson says, okay, you're fine. Steve, I'm going to give you a cortisone injection. Keep going back. He goes back to see Dr. Johnson another 2 months later. He says, look, my knee is still bothering me, now my leg. He's like, Steve, look, you got to work it off, Steve. Work it off. Okay, fine. Steve's never had this happen. He's going to trust the doctor. At this point, Dr. Williams is way in the review. He goes in, he tries to work it off. Guess what, guys? Now it's already a year. He's still having a lot of pain. He hasn't been able to work more than 4 hours a day. And the doctor says, Steve, look, dude, you're at maximum medical improvement. And sorry, but these are permanent restrictions, 4 hours a day. The insurance company sees that come through, talks to the employer, and the employer's like, I can't have Steve work here 4 hours a day only. We can't. Bring Steve in the office. Steve, I'm sorry to tell you, but you have permanent restrictions and we can't accommodate you. We have to let you go. Steve's mortified. He's worked there 20 some odd years. He makes a lot of money. And what I didn't tell you is Steve is 62, so he didn't have any plans to be, Steve's upset, but he's like, if this is the way it goes, fine. The insurance company doesn't hear anything else back from them. He goes to Dr. Johnson here and there maybe for the next year, once every 6 months, get another injection. He's unemployed. He is now he gets a job working at, I don't know, a gas station, making a quarter of what he was making, and he works 40 hours a week against his restrictions, and all of it blew up because of his comp case. He sees me on TV 5 years later, and he's like, let me talk to Attorney Goff just to see what would have happened had I got an attorney involved, a good attorney involved. Okay, so I'm not good technologically, but we're gonna rewind the script, okay? So let's say Steve gets hurt, calls the ambulance like he's supposed to, tells his employer, and then instead of, after Jane calls him, and that, the next day, he called me, right? He said, Brooke, look, I want to talk to you. I saw you on TV. I'm sitting in my hospital bed, and I saw you on TV. I want you to come in and talk to me. Fine. So we do hospital calls, guys, and we do host calls. But the problem is COVID. So we've been doing Zoom calls right now. But fine. I go to the hospital. Let's say it's not COVID time. I go to the hospital. I meet with Steve. I say, Steve, tell me about your case. He tells me, and I say, okay. And I bring my own papers. Here's a 1A form. So I give him I do a 30C. I fill that out. That opens my claim, which again, Steve didn't file because he thought the insurance company handled everything. I do a 1A form with him, and I say, Steve, look, concurrent employment, do you have any? Steve's like, well, what is concurrent employment? And I said, concurrent employment, like, do you have another job? Well, I buy and sell record albums. Oh, okay, but do you do that? He goes, no, I get a W-2. I do it for a company. Fantastic, right? So that gets counted as a concurrent employment. I then call the adjuster and I get his wages. And I say, I would like Steve's 52-week wage history so I can confirm that what you're saying, $800 a week, is indeed true. She gets it over to me. I do the math and I'm like, I'm coming up with $1,000 a week. She goes, well, overtime doesn't count. Yes, it does, ma'am. You're wrong. Fine. So I prove my case. He gets $1,000 a week. So now Steve's collecting $1,000 a week. But what you don't know is he also has that concurrent employment, which equaled another $200 a week. So realistically, Steve's getting $1,200 a week. The second injury fund gets involved there, which I'll talk to you guys about at another time, another video. But the point is, Steve's getting $1,200 a week, right? He says, Brooke, I would love to see Dr. Williams, my wife, and Brooke recommend. Okay, sure, no problem. I call the adjuster. Oh, we like Dr. Johnson. I could care less. He's seeing Dr. Williams. Have a nice day. Okay, you can see Dr. Williams, call and make your appointment. Fine. I hand Mr. Smith mileage forms. He's like, what are these? I say, these are mileage. You get paid for your mileage, round trip miles to and from doctor's appointments. You get right now 56 cents a mile. Oh, I had no idea. Okay. Steve gets discharged, goes to see Dr. Williams, the person he wanted to see, obviously, goes to is getting his mileage because he's filling out his mileage forms, is getting $1,200 a week. And Dr. Williams, guys, Dr. Williams sees that they're, his age, he's got a little osteoarthritis in the knee and the leg. He wants to be conservative. So he keeps him out for 6 months, right? After 6 months, he says, Steve, you can do light duty. Steve's like, this is fantastic. I feel good because I've been off at 6 months. I don't feel Dr. Williams has tried to force me back to work at all. I've never had a issue with my checks because I have Attorney Goff. She's been handling it. My medical appointments, everything's been approved. I'm happy, thrilled, in fact. He gets released back light duty. Now, he does still have that pain though, guys, in his knee, okay? The doctor, that I told you about, he went back to the doctor to get the injection. But we're going to, Dr. Williams, right? He's out for Mr. Smith's well-being, not the insurance company. So Dr. Williams is like, before I do anything, let's pause the brakes for a minute. Let's just send you for a little MRI and see what's going on with the knee. Fine. It's small tear, guys. Small tear in the knee. Terrible, right? Small tear. And it was probably happened at the time of the leg, but he didn't know about it because that was the least severe of the injuries. Dr. Williams is like, we can do a surgery. We can fix it. Fixes the tear in the knee. He's out of work again, but he's getting his checks, $1,200 a week again, guys, for 4 more months. Guess what? He's then released back to work light duty again. But guess what? He doesn't have any issues because he got all the treatment he needed and he got everything fixed when he needed it. Okay, great. And he got all of his benefits and he got his mileage. He got everything, okay? He goes back light duty and he goes back to his doctor 3 months later and says, Doc, I want to try full duty. I feel good, right? Fine. He goes back and the doctor releases him back full duty. And guess what? He can pretty much for the most part do it because he got the proper medical attention. Now, this could have gone another way, guys, too. Let's stick with the same thing that happened before. He could have not had a tear, just had a knee issue, had the injection put in the knee, had it not work. What happens next, right? So let's talk about that. But let's say the whole thing played out where he had permanent restrictions for 4 hours a day, and the employer couldn't satisfy the restrictions, so they had to let him go. What happens next, right? Okay, so there's a good alternative that he got the medical attention he needs, and now he's back to work. He keeps his job. Everybody's happy. But let's go back to the old example where Steve was just now working at a gas station, working a quarter of what he was getting, right? Because, his job couldn't accommodate him. Well, guess what, guys? What Steve didn't get in that scenario without an attorney is this: the 30C file, the 1A file to confirm his comp rate was wrong, right? But it was wrong, but he trusted the insurance company. It was wrong by $400, as we discussed. And let's say, now he came to me, right, 5 years later, so I can only tell him what he could have done different on his case to make a difference, okay? So let's talk about Steve for a minute and what he could have done and what he didn't get. Number one, he didn't get mileage because he didn't know about it, so that stinks. His comp rate was wrong. He didn't know about that either. $400 wrong. Let's say it's 26 weeks at $400. That's $10,200, right? It's a lot, guys, okay? Now, let's say his leg, right? So his leg is compromised, right? What Steve didn't know and what the doctor didn't tell him, because he was sent there by the insurance company, who was the doctor to tell him, and the insurance company's not going to tell him, is he's owed a permanency on his leg and his knee, but technically it's going to be the leg. He's owed a permanency, guys, all right? So he needs to get a permanency rating. So let's just say he got, this is a low, we'll go high, 20% rating of his leg at 155 weeks, okay? So we do, what is that? 10% of 155 is 15. So let's say 30 weeks at $1,200. I mean, that's 30,000 some odd dollars, right? He didn't know he was entitled to it. He didn't do anything about it, and he didn't get it. He didn't get it because he didn't know. Okay, so now he's sitting here with a bum leg and another job, and he didn't know. What he also didn't know is he could have tried to settle this case, right? If he settled this case, he would have got 2 years of education around his restrictions paid for by workers' comp. He didn't know. He's working in a gas station, guys. He didn't know. He never had this happen. And he all thought, his biggest reason when I met with him is he said, I thought attorneys, I had to pay an attorney. We get paid at the end of the case. But all these benefits I've already rattled off for Steve would have more than paid for my fee. And then he would have gotten so much more than he already got. And likely would have gotten a lump sum. So what is Steve entitled to, right? Well, he's entitled to his PPD, his permanency for his leg, Future loss of work, it's called TT, temporary total disability. I would argue he's entitled to 308A since he has permanent restrictions. That's an percentage of his earning capacity, okay? So for instance, if his $800 wage weight, he may get $300 to $400 depending on what his restrictions are, but he's still gonna get that multiplied by the amount of weeks for his permanency. What else? His future medical, his future prescriptions, everything else, okay? So what Steve would have gotten, that's what he would have gotten if he had an attorney. So where Steve got paid for those 4 months before the doctor put him back to work, Dr. Johnson, on his own, and now he's sitting here at a gas station making less money, where his case is now, the insurance company is not realistically not going to settle for anything more than nominal after 5 years of nothing. To having an attorney, Steve would have either been in a new job because he went to school, he'd be back to work because we had great medical care, and we got to choose it. He would have been able to choose his own doctor. He would have had his right comp rate. He would have had a hearing at a drop of a hat in the event that something went wrong. He would have, what else? He would have had his permanency. And then he would have probably walked away with a lump sum settlement at the end of it, and a golden ticket to 2 years of education paid for, guys, okay? This is what Steve meets with me 5 years later and he's like, I can't believe I didn't do this. Most people do that. Don't be Steve. Don't be 5 years later. Be now. If your case is a year old, it can be remedied. If your case is 2 years old, it can be remedied. After 2 years, there's a chance parts of it can still be remedied, guys, but I'm going to be fully transparent with you. It's hard, okay? It's hard, and you have to have the right commissioner, and you have to have the right doctor, and I have to review the notes and see what decisions you make, because every decision you make affects your case, whether it's now or 3 years from now, okay? Don't be Steve, all right?